the Northwest home for paranormal. You're listening to U.S. Phenomenon with your host, Mario Magana.
From the Pacific Northwest in the shadow of the 1962 World's Fair, the Space Needle. Good evening. I'm your host, Mario Magana. This is U.S. Phenomenon. You can be a part of the show by texting the studio hotline at 775-990-5151 tonight. You can be a subscriber to our podcast and TV stream. Just go to my website, onairmario.com, to subscribe to our podcast, or wherever you download your favorite podcasting. Just go and search U.S. Phenomenon. I'd like to take a quick moment to welcome our new affiliate, North Beach Community TV, to the U.S. Phenomenon family. Welcome to them as they become part of the crew. It's an honor to have you here with us and to be our first local TV station. Join us coming February 20th. Psychic Chris Dufresne will be joining us for free readings. If you want to be a part of that and you haven't had an opportunity to see Chris or meet him, people are like, who is Chris Dufresne? His mom is the psychic Sylvia Brown, the late Sylvia Brown. So if you remember her, he is just as good as she is. You can have a free reading. Go to my website, onairmario.com, to register. Space is limited because this thing will fill out quick, just like our Sasquatch conference. It'll be here today, gone tomorrow. Everything will be streamed live. You'll be able to be a part of it and get a free reading from Chris. Do you believe in ghosts? Do you feel their presence in the dark of the night? Perhaps you've heard strange whispers, the still of an empty room. Our guest, paranormal veteran Ross, focuses on his attentions on the physical aspect of the ghost. Chad Goodwin, an inventor and scientist, collects the evidence from their test subjects who are naked. Stay with me now, because the most important place they go are where the most haunted and supernatural contacts may be. Before we get to that, let's take a watch or listen to this piece right here from them and their TV show, ParaSense. Here we go.
Come touch me. Oh my God!
Touch, one of the five senses we can't live without. It helps guide us through our lives. Touch gives us warmth and comfort, as well as pain and suffering. But what about those stories of people getting touched by ghosts and spirits? People getting scratched and molested by something unseen? How is this happening? Is it real or fabricated? And if it is real,
Are you trying to touch me?
what could it mean?
Even though science has yet been able to prove or disprove these strange encounters, through the years of patterns and consistency, shows us the phenomenon is true.
I think you're on the right path. I think you're at kind of a precipice where you can clearly show that humans have an experience that has an objective piece to it, which at the very least should get other scientists interested in looking at that question.
My whole research process is trying to bring in a more scientific basis. People need to understand that this is not just your bells and whistles that you see on ghost hunting shows. This is real science.
I'm going to really do my best to try to find information and data that suggests that this is a real thing that we're looking for.
It was here in D Block that changed everything for me and for you.
Great deal. Oh my God! Hey, you in the corner here touches people. You around here? Really? Scratch me? Oh, man.
At the exact time that I was scratched, looking at the larger data set, you can see anomalies in the PIR and ultrasonic sensors. We can use that data to then create an animation showing what happened in approximate real time. So it looks like whatever it was moved toward me and then away very quickly.
When dealing with the paranormal, you have to be prepared for just about anything when the spirits are truly the ones in charge. The question is, how does the body perceive these experiences? What are the cause and effects of when this happens? And most of all, How do you prove these intimate encounters? For the first time in history, our journey into this untapped realm has only just begun.
It is my pleasure to welcome Chad and Ross to U.S. Phenomenon. Guys, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Man, it's been too long, but it's also back then when we first had you guys come on the show, it was way different because we couldn't really talk about any of this stuff that you guys had been doing or had done, but could only give limited pieces. So let's break down everything that you guys have done. Let's talk about what's coming up with you guys, like everything that you guys are doing with your guys' TV show now, what you've done, and what's to come that you are able to share.
Well, one of the things is it has been out to the public now. You can watch our first documentary on Amazon, Apple TV, YouTube. It's out there in many streaming outlets, and you can also buy it on DVD through Amazon as well. So we're really excited about that. We're finally able to get our research out to the audience, and they can see what we've been doing because, I've been doing this for, going on 7 years now, just trying to validate these and physical encounters that people claim that they have. And so thanks to Chad, joining the team, we've been able to now further that research and try to build more credibility to this, because one of the things that, we're trying to reach out to the audience is that, this is not, just naked ghost hunting. We are really trying to build more credibility to what people claim when they have these physical encounters. So I think, that's been one of our biggest challenges, is letting people know that if you are familiar with a lot of the shows that you watch when it pertains to ghost hunting, this is not it. We've got some amazing things that happen, some jump scares, type of thing, but this is real research, and we are trying to get it out there and let people know that there is some credibility to what people claim when they're being physically touched.
And what's interesting, I know that this is where Chad comes in, and you're having that the invention and being the scientist behind most of this. This is where it becomes more credible, right, Chad?
Yeah, really, when I stepped into it, when Ross came to me and asked me, hey, you go on this journey, how would you sense that people were being touched by ghosts? What I really did was when I went out and looked at what he did, I wanted to make sure that he was, following some kind of a scientific method, and that I could pick that method up and move it on. And what I found out was that, he had equipment and he had methods and he had this empirical way of collecting evidence in ways that was very interesting. And so it made the most sense if I could take what he was already working on and start expanding and multiplying that to collect data.
And when everyone says, why naked? Why does the subject need to be naked?
Well, one of the things is, if you're trying to prove touch, you need to know what's happening to the physical body. You have to see, what's happening to the skin, to the muscles. And so if you have people wearing clothes, and of course they've claimed that they've been touched, it becomes contaminated evidence. Anybody in the scientific field or even a skeptic will sit there and say, well, unfortunately, it could have been just their, shirt, rustling around or anything like that. And, another thing too is, the skin is the largest sensing organ. So that increases the opportunity of feeling like you're being touched. Because if you are wearing, fabric or clothing and something does touch you, we can't, verify that you felt it.
And when you guys were doing these records, were any of those local here in Western Washington or in Washington?
No, we've been all over the place. But like I said, I've been doing this for going on 7 years. So I started locally and branched out, because the main thing is we wanted to find if there were places that had the physical encounters. So there's been a lot of places. In fact, Chad talk about some of the places he got to join us.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the USS Turner Joy. That definitely, we had some experiences in there, and Ross seemingly knows how to ring them. So we were in the front of the boat and we could hear things, and there's I don't know, it's crazy. And I had some other experiences there. And then in the documentary, the first place we stop is Northport, Washington. And so we did a whole investigation. It's in the documentary from right here in Washington.
And I know that in the documentary, you got scratched? Is that what happened?
Yeah, when we were going into this, Ross was telling me maybe not antagonize, ghosts, because you just don't know what could happen or whatever it is, right? We just don't know what could be happening. And I kind of took it upon myself to do that. And it got met with me getting the scratch. And there was actually a sound that was associated with the scratch. Like myself and another person that was there actually heard it. And so, yeah, that was not what I was expecting.
And when you talk about the sound, what can you describe that for our audience, for our people who are watching?
The weird thing about it is, it's like in a normal situation where somebody hits you, you get the pressure and you get the sound from it, right? So you kind of experience that whole thing at once, and you know what happened. But in that case, what happened was the sound happened, so I could hear the sound coming from the right side by my ear, but I felt no pressure with it. So I knew something happened, and my body reacted like something happened, but I couldn't actually feel anything happen in the moment when that initially actually happened.
And the data showed that something happened. I mean, you were going back through most of your guys' data. Did it scar you? Were you scarred? Or, I mean, is it healed? Did you have any, like, in that episode, was there any proof? Were you able to see like red marks, or was there, I don't know, I guess I'm really looking for evidence, like physical evidence.
Yeah, there was a red mark that appeared on my neck. And the reason why I say appeared was Shanna, who is also in the documentary, came right around and looked at it. And it was also, there was several strange parts about it. One, it didn't show up like as that completely. It kind of, like she said, almost like started to get worse and form what it was in front of her. But then also, I didn't feel it at first, like I said. And so it took a few minutes, and then there was like a burning sensation that went along with it. So it seemed like the whole thing wasn't a normal interaction with the human body. At least not that I'm used to when I scratch myself, right?
Right. Or, I was going to tongue in, cheek joke with you, Chad, because I know we do go back, and, like, this isn't your normal, like some girl kissing you on the side of the neck and giving you, a love tap or a love bite or a love scratch. Ross, when you're doing these experiments, I know you were talking about this earlier, how you've done this for such a long time. And I know that outside of the paranormal TV stuff that you've done with the documentaries and these different docu-series, outside of the collecting of this data and doing these projects, you actually go out and do local stuff, or I would say you go out and do other, haunts or, investigations, if it's different old abandoned buildings, or maybe it's not abandoned and it's, even a functioning building. You guys will go out after hours and look for that type of paranormal activity. Is that would that be correct?
Yeah. No, I am the only full-time ghost hunter in the Northwest. So I've been for, going on, a little over 30 years now. I've been traveling all over the world, investigating haunted locations and trying to validate those encounters as well. To me, I was just surprised to find that I was the first in history to try and prove touch. No one's ever tried to take on that challenge.
And I get so excited, and I have to slow down. When you say touch, we're talking like, how do you record that? Obviously with, I want to say doc.
That's the challenge right there. How do you prove that? That's what me and Chad have been trying to do for the couple of years now that we've been doing this. Is like, how do you prove touch? And, when I started doing this, I was just trying to come up with various different experiments to try and see if I could validate that. It wasn't until Chad came along and helped, advance us with some more equipment and collecting the data to show that there's something happening. And I think one of the most amazing things that we captured, when we experienced the physical phenomena, is the patterns. And I'll let Chad talk about how important patterns are.
So what's, just to further what, on what Ross was just saying there too, it makes the most sense to do what we're doing, because if you were to just put a bunch of data collection stuff into a room and collect the data, you're not necessarily going to know what you're looking at. You could be seeing rhythmic things in a room. You could be seeing, if you use an EMF, you could see an EMF spike, but you would have to baseline that space long enough to know whether that was rhythmic or not.
Right.
And what we can do is we can baseline this space out and then look at all of that data and see what things are rhythmic in a space. But also by having the human in there, since there's so much empirical evidence over time that's been collected by humans, I've been touched, they tug on me, they do all these, I get poked. It makes the most sense to use that empirical sensor and base everything scientifically around that. That's the only way I think we can understand the human interaction with this, and how maybe to go into a new space, use just data collection to do that. Because then we can see, like I said, patterns, and we can see what makes sense and where things actually tip off. And that's where I would like to get.
And when you guys are collecting the evidence for someone like myself or a non-scientist or just a viewer, taking the ones and zeros and the collected science data that you guys are collecting and to put that into animation has been phenomenal. Because looking at those pieces that were, just for those who were watching, or if you're watching the stream on USP TV, you go to our website, onairmario.com. You can watch the show now, thanks to our affiliates across the US Phenomenon. But when we talk about that animation is so key for someone who may be just a nonchalant average watcher or viewer, to be able to see that, and then it puts it together, from soup to nuts, to be able to have that type of see me, feel me, touch me, because we live in that society and some people just don't work in the worlds of ones and zeros and collected data. So congrats to you guys on that piece, because that animation is huge, to be able to watch what you guys are doing with that collected data and then transpose that into the animation there.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things in science, is really how do you take the information that you get, and then how do you convey that to the people you're trying to tell the story of what you've collected to. And sometimes that's graphs, and sometimes that's a table, of data. But in this case, there was really only one way to do it, and that was to try to take the data and then make it into something that we could say, hey, we know that happened, and we know something came at it. This is what it could have looked like. And what's even better is we can take those data points, because we log them all with date, time, all the way into the millisecond range. And so we can actually put together what it looks like and how fast things were moving and the distance that things were moving. And you see it's choppy because it was the distance and time was different. And that's how we can make it so people can actually experience it with us on what we think was happening.
And, that's another big challenge that we faced, is because a lot of these television shows, they claim that they're trying to be scientific in their approach, and they really aren't. There's not a lot of data collecting going on in a lot of these shows.
Right.
And even Chad watched a lot of these shows just to kind of get an idea of what we're trying to do. And I forewarned him. I said, this is not what we're trying to do, what we see on TV. And so trying to make science entertaining for the audience as well is one of those challenges that we face. Is, what can we do to help them understand how important this data is? And Chad did the animation, and kudos to him for doing that.
It was, I agree on some of the stuff that we're seeing that's more mainstream on this. One episode of a show, they put like an iPad right on a countertop and sat in a chair, and they were like, okay, touch it. And if something interacted with it, it would go off. You can't explain what that was. It could have been a program, could have been a timer, could have been any number of things that set that off. And there's nothing to directly correlate that experience with anything that you could say happened in that space.
And that's one of the biggest problems we have in the paranormal field, is most ghost hunting shows and ghost hunters alone out there, investigating the paranormal, are dependent on these spontaneous things that happen in a haunted location, whether that's just a sound or whether that's, a spike on their EMF detectors. And they want to say, oh, that's paranormal, it's a ghost. But that doesn't really prove anything. It's exciting when you're in the moment, but, like Chad said, we need more. We need to be able to validate these experiences. We need to challenge ourselves as paranormal investigators. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that, or they don't know how to do that. And so that's why, you know, we're trying to break the mold when it comes to ghost hunting.
Well, I mean, some of the, oh, sorry, Mario. That's also that we just don't have the capability. Some people don't have the capability to actually create this instrumentation. That's where things come from. So you buy it from somebody and they have whatever their thing is, and you're limited to that. That's kind of where I think the convergence happens.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because you're trying to get that "I got you" moment, and especially in TV production. For those who, I mean, it's not sexy. That's a lot of time, a lot of digital film that has to be edited. You're trying to get an aha moment in regards to collecting the data, and it's the pressure of whatever you might be doing. I think that in your guys's be able to have someone like a Chad who is a scientist, where you're not purchasing the gear and it's customized for what you guys are looking for, but it's working for you guys, and that speaks volumes across all platforms, especially in the paranormal world, where you guys are able to say, "Look, man, we got science behind us now," because everyone's going to say, "Oh, hey, maybe," but now we're talking about hard evidence. I mean, you guys are recording it, you're seeing this, and to have the, again, like I said, the touch me, feel me, see me aspect to this is game changer for you guys. I just, congratulations on that part. Not trying to sit here and, you know, suck up, but just good kudos on your guys' team to be able to put this together in a fashion where the average listener, viewer has the opportunity to understand what you're trying to do versus we're doing a TV show here and we're going to script it as much as we possibly can. And yes, I'm sure some of that has to happen for them because they don't have the ability to, I mean, it's the same thing as like a Bigfoot hunter or a cryptid. They're going out, they're like, okay, we'll see these, whatever, you know, maybe we see this nest or a footprint or, you know, broken branches or things upside down of whatever, you know, rocks stacked. But was that filmed? Was that, you know, set up? How does that play out in those worlds? So to be able to back it with science is huge.
Well,
and
another thing,
one of the other things that we did that was really good too is if you see in the, you know, when you watch the documentary, we talked to Lloyd Auerbach and we took him out with us on one of our investigations because to me, when Ross brought up that we had that opportunity, I wanted to make sure that somebody else that was known and has been doing this and working through this type of stuff for some time to see our method and agree that the scientific method and how we're applying it is correct. And I've also been really lucky to be able to have contact with Barry Taff as well, who is, was part of the Entity case back in the day. And Ross knows all that. And talk to him about it and give him some of the stuff and have him, who's kind of he doesn't really believe in ghost hunting, say, wow, you guys are applying this method and you are getting things. You know, that was also, it was third-party scientists that are in the field as well that helped.
And to touch more on that, as I was going to say, is we have to be as transparent as possible. And that's our goal. You know, we want everybody to see all the data. You know, you probably don't want to look at the millions upon millions of data points that Chad collected, but we're willing to share it to the audience. If you want to see it, let us know. You know, we want to put the experiments up there to the public, you know, from point A to point B. Because I know when you watch a lot of the documentaries, you're seeing that edited portion of it. But we want the audience to be able to see what happens. And if you see the documentary at the very end, after the credits, there is an experiment that runs from the beginning to the end. And if you want to sit through it and watch it, you know, go for it. We just want to prove to people that this is not, you know, actors pretending to be, you know, subjects. This is not, you know, the magic of editing. We want to be as transparent as we can so that you guys know as an audience that we're trying to do the right thing. And we have to be transparent and we have to be willing to show you all the data so that you can see it, you know, for what it's worth.
And in transparency, I was going to say is key, and good on you guys for being that transparent. Now, here comes a sexy question, or maybe not so sexy question. I mean, how much time do you typically spend on these, putting all this, like when you go out to a shoot, or I shouldn't say shoot, but to go out and collectively do a science experiment, how much time are you spending out on the field?
Well, usually when we set up an experiment, we'll be on the property for maybe 2 or 3 days. Because one of the biggest challenges we also have in the paranormal field, anybody that's been involved, it's all about being at the right place at the right time. So we can't always expect that every time we do an experiment, we get results. So it's a lot of trial and error on that end as well.
And Ross is a slave driver, man. We were working 20 plus hours a day. You know, we get there in the morning, we got B-roll, you got all the things you got to do to get all the other things. And then we do the experiments at night. And yeah, I mean, it was grueling time. So it's 3 days, but it's 3 days you're working.
I mean, literally. Now, okay. On a side note, what's your guys' favorite thing to get to eat when you're on the road like that?
I'd go for pizza anytime.
Okay.
Or is it In-N-Out? You like the In-N-Out?
Oh, In-N-Out, yes. If In-N-Out or Freddy's is in the area, I'm there.
See, this is the stuff that people don't always get to talk about. You know, like, what are you guys doing for food? You know, I was reading a story recently. Do you guys typically bring things? Let's say you're going to a place, a hotel, wherever you're going to do an investigation, and you've done your research. Do you typically bring things that, let's say there's a subject, a ghost there that was maybe a kid or whatever? Do you ever bring them gifts or bring things that they may have liked back in those days from that time period?
Well, when we're doing normal ghost hunting, yes, that's what you call a trigger. So you try to bring things that might be more associated with what's haunting the location. So if you are dealing with children, toys are really great to deal with. Old time music is really great. So yeah, it's definitely good. I know when I've investigated like the Turner Joy or the USS Hornet, we'll dress up in naval uniforms, especially naval uniforms for the time when the ships were active.
Okay.
And sometimes that can trigger some phenomena as well.
And have you spent any time at the old mortuary in Seattle?
So which one are you talking? The one in Georgetown?
No, Kells. No, Kells.
Oh, Kells. Yes. In fact, I was one of the first teams to ever investigate that place.
And so it's been told, I guess, recently that there's now something on level 1, the main, if you're on the First Avenue side, which is the second level. But for those who have not seen or watched the old show, go back and search, you know, ghost hunts in Seattle. It's on one of my podcasts from back in the day. What's her name? Mercedes Yager. She was a guest on. So, but I guess there's someone now that entertains that space now, and I heard that was where the most haunts were at, was on level 2 on the First Avenue side.
All right, that was one of the weird stories when I initially investigated it. It used to be a restaurant known as Avenue 1, and so we actually investigated that a few times, and then of course it closed down, and another place opened up, and I think that closed down, and another place opened up. So it had this history of businesses not being able to be successful in that location, even though it was prime real estate. There was a lot of struggles, and they kind of blamed it on possible paranormal activity as to why businesses couldn't survive in that location. And so it sat vacant for, gosh, I think a good, 10, 15 years before they finally renovated it. And now it's offices. And I have heard the stories that there have been people experiencing stuff on that. So there has been phenomena on that first level, on the First Avenue level, as well as the upstairs area too. So there's been activity reported on that location for quite some time.
And before we start talking about, you guys are going to do a second series, right? A second season, or of your ParaSense?
Yeah. This is a docuseries. So we are continuing to do the research because, we still need more data. we don't have enough data to tell you exactly what it is, but we can definitely validate there's some weird things happening when people have these encounters. So there is definitely some more. I've got well over 100 experiments that I've, jot down that I want to try. And I know Chad's got some great ideas he wants to add to it. So yeah, there's still a lot more.
And in the next ParaSense, we're going to add some new equipment, because part of the method is also to look at what works and what doesn't work. We found that some of these proximity sensors are working, so we've added more stuff, better, newer technology stuff, and so you'll see us add and take stuff away as we go as well.
Is any of the new stuff, can you talk about any of the locations? Are they any of them, I guess in generalities, are any of them going to be around Western Washington?
Yes. No, I can't guarantee what's going to make it to the actual final edits.
For sure. No.
But we tend to focus our attention on more local places because we have easier access to those places. It's a lot bigger expense and harder to schedule when we have to do bigger trips. We definitely want to, because one of the things is, you got to find that prime location where the physical phenomena is happening. So I'm constantly got my ear to the wall trying to find the great locations that we can get into. So I know we have filmed the first segments of what we want to add to the next documentary. But again, it just depends on what happens next. And then in the second part as to what we capture, as to what gets put together and how we tell the story. Because that was a big challenge for us, because when I first started doing all this research, I wasn't thinking about putting together a documentary. I was just trying to collect the data to validate these experiences. And then when we had, over, 6 years of footage, and then when Chad comes in, we have more footage, it got to be a challenge is how do we tell our story? So we do consider this one our origin story. And as we move forward, we'll focus more on the experiments and the data and the technology.
Well, because what makes it so difficult, I mean, from a production standpoint, you guys are scientists, and you guys have, and you're you've been a part of the paranormal community for such a long time, Ross, to then put your mindset into making sure that you're capturing what you need, B-roll, for those that don't know that, like side pictures and stuff of the gear, and maybe the banter of like 2-on-2, not actually for voiceover work, and all this extra production stuff that you guys have to go through to tell the story correctly. I think that really changes the product, and I think you guys will continue to put out an amazing product. And for those who haven't had a chance to watch ParaSense, they can see it all over. They can download it as the docu-series. And where can they find it? On Apple, I believe, is one of the Apple TV.
Apple, Amazon, YouTube. Yeah, it's out there. There's quite a few outlets that have been playing it now.
Google, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Let's talk about before I want to get into the next stuff, but what was your guys' favorite experiment from the series, from the docu-series? Chad or Ross?
Well, I think mine was obviously where I got scratched. I mean, that was a pretty big moment, and we experienced so much stuff. Well, I guess Ross is used to it, but I wasn't. And, after I got out of there, man, it took me a little bit to get over that whole idea that I got scratched. And then I do an experiment in the documentary right after that, because that was kind of a side thing that was just happening. It wasn't even an experiment when I got scratched, but the cameras were rolling. And then after that, when I did my actual experiment in that space, it was weird, because in the moment things are happening, you just feel uncomfortable. But then when I went back and I hear myself speak, and there's a moment where I got pressure and I could actually hear the words getting squeezed from me, it was just like, wow, that was like, when I came home, I was messed up. But that was my favorite one where I got scratched.
Okay.
For me, it's tough, because I've done a lot of experiments, some that haven't made it to the public's eye yet. But I think one of my favorites that we are going to go into more detail in the next one is the puppet. And that is where we take elastic string and we attach it to the more sensitive parts of the physical body. So, like the wrist, we've done the nipples, the back of the neck, various parts of the body where they seem to be more sensitive. And then you take that and you stretch it out to other parts of the room. So what my thought was, you're kind of extending the nervous system. So if anything should pass through these strings that are, surrounding you now and attached to you, hopefully you might feel a vibration or some sort of tugging. And we were getting that. And we had quite a few interesting experiments where people have had those experiences. In fact, Chad even tried that a few times, and he can validate.
That would not
Yeah,
be.
I mean, you can, when there was a general thing in the space and there was something that you could actually feel happening on the strings every so often.
So what makes our docuseries a little more interesting is we are taking these experiments that I come up with and applying the challenge to Chad and say, Chad, okay, now how can we collect data from this? And so that's what we're excited about is, Chad now has this new challenge. It's like, okay, what can we do to validate that there is something happening when these strings are being vibrated or tugged on? And so that's where the audience gets to join us on that adventure, where we take these experiments that we've teased you in the last one, and now we're going to take it further. Chad has to try and validate these, experiences that people are having. So that's what makes it exciting for both of us. I get to come up with these great experiments. Chad gets to try and validate what's happening during the experiment.
Our guest, I feel like I have the harder end of that stick there, Ross.
Yeah, our guest tonight, Chad and Ross from ParaSense, because people are like, what are you talking about? Nipples and strings. And so if you're just joining us, this is not this is a paranormal radio show or TV show. So they're talking about their experiments that they're doing. So if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for being a part and jumping on. But if you missed any of it, you can go back and watch it. All available on onairmario.com. Just click on USPTV. You can watch the stream for free. Everything's for free on US Phenomenon. All right. It's easier to go to just onairmario.com. It takes you straight to US Phenomenon. Now, if this is going to be your most favorite experiment, I know that you guys go, well, I know, Ross, you go out and you do these different ghost hunting ventures on your own. And I know you're going to do one locally. Now, if someone like myself or someone wanted to go, where would you tell them, where can they find you at? Or if they'd like to join, because I know you have some stuff coming up here soon.
Well, I always encourage people to check me out on Facebook. It seems to be the one social media that I tend to be a little more active on. So Ross Allison Ghost Hunter is where you can always find me. And I usually post a lot of stuff that we're working on, trips that I'm going on, any live video that I'm doing. So that's always a great place. If you want to see any of my books, you can also, go to Amazon and find a lot of my books that I've published as well. So there's a lot of outlets where you can find me. You just type in Ross Allison Ghost Hunter and you'll find me.
Chad, what patents are you working on now for the paranormal world that you're able to share without giving away too much information?
We're working on more stuff and instrumentation around looking at the space. And now, if you can imagine, we're trying to sense the space between the spaces. And so we've kind of gone away from just around the person directly. And now I'm working on technologies and looking to apply technologies that can look further through the spaces.
Do you guys
feel walls and stuff?
Do you guys feel that with, I know recently I read a story about a lot of paranormal activity on airplanes on the closed circuit PA system has been reported recently. I'm not sure if you've seen or heard about this, something that we did a US Phenomenon Paranormal Story of the Week, where there have been reported things being said on the PA system that were not the flight attendant or the pilot. This is something that's been actively happening a lot on American Airlines. So if you guys are looking for a fun, maybe airplane situation, maybe look up those stories. I'm not sure that being in a tube like that really basks with all the surrounding noises, but I don't know, just interesting to hear. I mean, anything's possible in that. I don't know that what people are hearing could, I don't know, it could be interference from, cell phone, things of that nature too. So.
Yeah, that whole thing. So I've been really focused. One of the other things, since you asked that earlier question, I've been really focused on thinking about this EVP, the electronic voice phenomena where you can you can record it, and in our days in audio, it starts bringing up things like you just said, like cell phones and things. And so I've been looking at this EMI quite significantly and trying to figure out if there is a way we can actually see how that voice interaction could be happening directly with the electronics.
And just seeing locally of places that are haunted or that have, I don't want to say haunted, but have more paranormal activity. Ross, I know you guys are going to do something locally here. I definitely want to try and jump on that just to go and hang out. And, I've not ever seen anything. And that's the thing that's the beauty. I'm like, I've never seen anything. So maybe I shouldn't go just because they're like, oh, he has like, hey, this is a virgin. Let's get him, And I mean, we always talk about like the Georgetowns, the haunted houses, the haunted morgue, which tongue in cheek, it's just a great haunted house. And it's interesting because everyone's like, oh, that was a mortuary. But I'm like, if you do your research,
it wasn't.
It was not a mortuary, ladies and gentlemen.
I think you should come out to the Turner Joy with Ross and I and experience that. That's a good
You can be a subject.
I don't know that anybody wants to see all this naked. You know what I mean? But hey, for science, I guess. Who knows?
Hey, maybe a great show for you.
Yeah, right. Rating host, U.S. Phenomena host naked. But seriously, on what I love too about what you guys are doing is the show me, the touch me, see me, feel me aspect to this, because a lot of it seems when you watch not just your stuff, but in general, most of it prior to you guys coming out seems so scripted in that world. And it's unfortunate because it's like, oh man, someone who's been a part of this business for such a long time, it's like you start to see we'll call it the almost like the real world effect, that piece where it's supposed to be reality TV, but as I throw quotations in the air, but to have that piece not be so scripted and being able to tell your story. I think what's great is, again, the science and data that you guys are collecting to prove and show what you guys are doing. And I'm assuming that a lot of data is being collected, but some of it isn't, you can't use because it's like that. There's not really anything going on at this venue.
Well, I think one of the challenges that we've faced is, we want the audience to know that we are legit. I'm a real ghost hunter. Chad is a real scientist. We're not actors playing this to be on TV. And I think that's the biggest problem, because if you watch a lot of these television shows, it's become the same thing over and over and over again. It's just a different cast, Right. And we are trying to let people know that there is something different out there that you can watch and learn from. We want to be as educational as possible. As we said, we want to be as transparent as possible. So it has been challenged because a lot of the television shows are looking for the next Zach Bagans, and we're not that, So if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry. But if you're looking for, some of the exciting, research and the reactions that people experience when they encounter this phenomena, we got that. We covered all that. We've got some pretty exciting things that do happen. And so it's a fascinating field to be in. And it's, been exciting to share our story and experiences.
I think what's good, what I like about it is it seems to me from a scientific standpoint, going into this from a new thing, is that it's endless opportunity right now to figure it out, because even in the documentary, we show other things that happen to people that we didn't capture any data on. So that means there's more ways that this phenomenon manifests than we even know yet. And so how many different ways, and then how many different of those things does it take before we can say we think we know it's something, right? So,
right.
Well, I think, one of the things that we, me and Chad are very proud of, and the team that has joined us on this adventure, is we have been the first to actually track phenomena.
as you know, Chad has pointed out with the animation, we can show what actually happened, that something came into the environment and then left. And that alone is pretty amazing, because even working with, you know, Lloyd Arbach, you know, parapsychologist, you know, there's a big belief and this could also be part of it as well when people experience touch. But a lot of people believed that this is something that you project from yourself and then it comes back and attacks you. And so you're actually attacking yourself through psychic phenomena.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that big, you know, belief out there. But what we've been able to prove now is that some entity came from nowhere, attacked the individual, and then left. So that right there is data that has never been collected before. So it shows that this is not something that you're projecting upon yourself. This is something that came out of nowhere and attacked you and then left.
And is it always attacked, or is it visited, or is attack really the word that we need to be using when we're looking at this? Honestly,
well, I choose that because that's what happened in those cases in the data that we collected. But otherwise, you know, it's not always negative. People have had a lot of positive experiences when it comes to a physical encounter with a spirit, shall we say.
Yeah. Have you done anything? I guess I always ask this. Well, I don't know that I asked this, but I think my curiosity, someone who's been from the Northwest, has lived here my whole life. The Cobain effect. Has anyone done anything around that home, around his place? Has anyone been able to do any? Is that a place that you guys would be interested in looking at?
The Kurt Cobain?
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I investigated a couple locations. I investigated his childhood home. You got to check that out. And so there was interesting phenomena around that. They wanted to claim that it was Kurt Cobain haunting the house. I don't know. I didn't get any information that can validate that. And then we also investigated the supposed bench, where the stories were that he hung out at the bench right outside of his home that where he had committed suicide. So there have been stories that people claim that they see him around that bench area. So yes, there has been some interesting things. And it's an interesting case alone. You know, I know there's a lot of stories, whether it was suicide or whether it was murder. No one knows for certain. But the situation is it was a very sudden and unexpected death, and that alone could easily trigger a haunting. Even if it was suicide, there's always regret. You know, sometimes there's a lot of stories out there where somebody does commit suicide and they choose to haunt because they're living in the afterlife in regret, that they wish they hadn't done that. They were just in a very, very dark and, you know, sad part of their life. So that could easily be a haunting. Or if it was murder, you know, maybe they're haunting because they want somebody to know the truth of what happened to them.
Right. Especially something so unexpected like that, to be abruptly gone here today, gone tomorrow. I mean, it could happen. Right. That case always interests me, and I find so many interesting articles about the Cobain case in regards to, was it apparent suicide? You know, I personally, if I was to give my own opinion about it, I think that, you know, the Seattle police probably did not do a full correct investigation, because they claimed him as a drug junkie. So on that piece, I think a lot of it's just swept under the rug. Okay, apparent suicide, boom, 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 we're done. And so, I mean, there's so much evidence out there. Hopefully somebody will be able to tell the correct story. And if it was suicide, then it was suicide. But if it was something else, people want to know about that as well.
All right. So
you guys are going to do a second series. You're going to do a second season. Do you want a series or season? What would it be? Docu-series?
I guess that's in addition to the series.
Yeah, in addition to the series. Like I said, we're not done. You know, I follow Chad's lead when he, you know, I get excited and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. We got this. And he's like, whoa, Ross, we need more data. We need more data. Right. So I have to follow his lead on that. So yes, you know, we definitely, I agree. We need more data to have a better understanding of what it is. Like I said, you know, we've been grateful in the fact that we've now been able to track the phenomena. We've also been grateful for the fact that we can show patterns, which, check and validate is very important in the scientific field. So, just a little bit of that information helps us to further the research. And I know he's got a lot of great ideas, and I'm excited to see what he comes up with as much as he's excited to see what I come up with. So we make a great team there.
Yeah.
How much filming have you done already for the second part of the docuseries?
We did, I think 3 days in an abandoned hospital. So that was pretty cool. And a brothel. That's right. There was a brothel involved in that too.
And that was all here in Washington. So
yeah,
there's an old brothel in Washington.
Yes, there is. There's a few.
Okay. Interesting.
It did happen in Washington too, just so you know.
Right. I'm like, that was a thing.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
I think it still is on Aurora.
It is, yeah.
Right. For those. Right. There's so much when you guys talk about putting this stuff together. When can people expect to see the second part of the docuseries, the next part? Are we talking a year from now? Are we talking 6 months?
No, I would probably maybe 6 months. It does take time after collecting the data, put the story together, and then the editing. The editing is probably the most grueling part of it all, trying to put it all together. So that usually takes a lot of time.
What, Chad, if you had one piece that you could say, I know that you and I go way back to our radio days. Did you ever think you'd be a wild scientist? I mean, I want to call you Doc Brown, but because of the tongue in cheek with the Back to the Future stuff, because I know we're the same. All of us here are roughly around the same age. What made you want to be?
He does have a patent for the flex capacitor.
I do have a patent for a working flex capacitor.
see, that's another show we have to do. I'm interested. Time travel, right? Time travels really. But did you think you'd be a wild scientist?
No, when I exited radio, or radio exited me, I don't know which one it was, but that's how it works in radio. I knew I wanted to do something with the skills that I had been putting together over time. And so when I went back to school after that, I thought I was going to go into electronics and do something. And then nanotechnology came along, and then I did cancer research and energy storage research. And then it all just culminated into this whole thing of, I'm a scientist and I have patents, so I'm an inventor. And then, I talked with Ross. I did a radio show here in 2016. It was part of one of the LPFM stations. And that's how we ended up meeting. And then when I told him I'm a scientist, and we talked about stuff, and I teased him, and I never talked to him again. And then 3 years later, he pops up. I'm like, yeah, now I can take all these skills I've gained and apply them to what you're doing too. And it's so interesting. And I just love all the facets of science.
Right.
That's how we got here. But no, I never thought when we were hanging out back in radio days, I'd be doing this.
And I love how the worlds really cross paths. And it's just I feel very blessed to had an opportunity to work with each other, but to, again, then sit down with you over time and watch how we've all evolved and grown and really done our own thing and take these different paths and look at the two of you who had worked together, worked on these different projects together in regards to broadcasting. And then all of a sudden you stacked your chips, he stacked his, and then it became one huge successful project that you guys have worked together on. And here you guys are working on the second piece of your venture. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
As we get close to wrapping things up here, if someone had something in regards to maybe they have a haunted home, I know that Seattle, Western Washington, there's a lot of old stuff. Maybe it's not even around here, but there are old places that have had these paranormal activities, and people are afraid to share this stuff because they don't want to be labeled as some crazy individual. Where would you tell them to go to?
Well, it's funny you say that people are afraid of sharing those stories. It's not really the case anymore. Back when I first started ghost hunting, this is before all the television shows, to date myself here, but you really didn't want to tell people you were a ghost hunter because you pretty much would find yourself alone at the party.
But now, because of the popularity of the ghost hunting shows, you're considered a rock star if you're in the paranormal field. So finding people that are more, than happy to share their experiences is pretty common. Pretty much anybody you meet, even if they are skeptical or not sure if they believe in ghosts, they tend to have some sort of, experience in their life that they can't explain, and they go to you for answers. So I've always told people, if you're looking for outlets, if you're having experiences in your home, you can look up a ghost, which is the Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle, Tacoma. We are the oldest ghost hunting group in the Northwest. You can seek us out for, possible investigations. I can't always bring Chad along because he's a very busy man as well. But I'm always looking for a good haunt to investigate.
And around the Pacific Northwest or anywhere, I guess, around the country, you guys are willing to go, time permitting, for your guys' investigation, I'm assuming. What's the most remote place you've been to do an investigation?
Northport.
Oh, wow.
Northport is in the middle of nowhere, believe me. It's a tiny little town. I think it's like maybe 2-3 blocks. Seriously.
So you're bringing it all in then?
Yeah. So, we've gone to pretty secluded, even the prison, Brushy Mountain Prison, middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So you find that some of the more interesting haunts have been in places like that. And I love getting into places that are not always the most popular ghost stories that have ever been told. Sometimes the best haunts have been the ones that really haven't had a lot of people investigate them. So I think we've been pretty lucky with that. But then the prison, a lot of people investigated that place. I think we just happened to be there at the right time, right place, because that was an amazing weekend.
Yeah, the whole weekend things were going on.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I mean, crazy stuff. What about the Green River? I know that there was, you have 2 prolific serial killers, deemed in Washington, Green River Killer, and then, Ted Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys done any of that? Any paranormal stuff? Have you around the river or around,
We have. We did an adventure out to one of the areas where bodies have been found. We didn't get anything. I know there had been a lot of stories of people seeing apparitions, walking around the areas, but a lot of those stories have not been circulating as much anymore. And I think maybe because the killers have been found. But I do know that sometimes a haunting can be tied to the place where their body hasn't been found. Because there's still a lot of victims out there that they didn't find all their bodies. So I think in a case like that, sure, I'd probably haunt a location just so that people could find my body. There's a great story where there was an apparition seen on the floating bridge on rainy nights. People would drive by and see a woman walking in the rain along the bridge. And of course they'd pull over because, it's not a place where pedestrians should be walking.
Right.
And they'd pull over to give her a ride. And as soon as they pass her and pull over, they turn around and she's not there.
Ooh.
And she had been seen numerous times walking that bridge on rainy nights. And come to find out, when they were doing the repairs on the bridge, divers were down under the bridge and they discovered a car. And when they pulled up the car, they found the body of a young woman in the car.
Oh.
And ever since her body had been discovered, she had never been seen. And they think what happened is on a rainy night, she was driving on that bridge. There was a bump in the bridge that she was just driving too fast. And when she hit that bump, and that was one of the repairs they were making, her car went over the edge and she drowned. And so I think a lot of times people saw her apparitions because she was trying to let people know that that's where she was. Right. And a lot of people thought, because this was the time when, Ted Bundy and, the Green River Killer were out there, and they thought she was one of the victims. No, she just died in a horrible accident.
As we wrap things up from the Pacific Northwest, any last parting words, guys, before we let you guys go?
Well, I think for me, I just hope people will give us a chance, check out our documentary. And, and hopefully they'll see for what we're trying to do is, trying to bring science and more credibility to the paranormal field.
And where can they find it one last time?
Amazon, Apple TV, Google, YouTube, and there's a few other ones out there.
We'll have a link posted. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, do that. We'll have a link in the podcast so you can watch it as well. Chad, anything before we let you go?
If there's anybody out there that has great locations and they're interested in collaborating with us and having us come work with them and set up, I would really like to talk to more people in the area and experiences and see if we can collaborate and have instrumentation running around, more than we're able to just do it ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys both. As we wrap things up from the Pacific Northwest, I'd like to thank our guests, Ross and Chad. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our affiliates, KOSW, KGRG, KAPY, our flagship station, KVI, and our new affiliate, North Beach Community TV. Welcome to U.S. Phenomenon. Also, if you haven't signed up for our psychic free reading, go to my website, onairmario.com, to subscribe. You'll be able to hang out with our special guest, Krista Frayne, who'll be doing personal readings as we do a full U.S. Phenomenon psychic reading show. Go to my website, On Air Mario, to subscribe. It's going to fill up fast. I promise you that. He is a great psychic medium from the Pacific Northwest. I'd like to thank you guys again. From my entire team, Jeff Jens, Mark Christopher, Sophia Magana, and myself, Mario Magana. Be sure to look up at the sky because you never know what you might see. Good night.